Your luck, Senators.
All right, thank you. It is it's still March 16th, and this is still the Senate Health and Welfare Committee meeting, and we now have our ledge counsel here with us to go through S25, a new iteration of S25, is based on the testimony that we've heard and the work that's been going on. So, Katie, thank you for being here, and we'll let you walk us through the bill and the new draft. Please.
Sure. Good morning, Katie McLean, Office of Legislative Counsel. So I think yes.
It's there.
Okay. So we are looking at Amendment 1.1 of the PFAS bill. This is a strike all amendment, and I've gone through and highlighted the changes, so we can just move directly to those changes. You can see where they are easily. So the first part of the bill is chemicals in cosmetic and menstrual products. And we have in section 1722, we have a list of prohibited chemicals, and this list has been updated. So you'll see on line 12 that bisphenols has been removed. Line 14, we're removing arsenic and arsenic compounds. Line 17, removing styrene. Line 19, removing cadmium and cadmium compounds. Line 20, also, we've already had the pleasure of hearing me try to pronounce these. I'm gonna just skip that one for now. It was line 21, Toluene. Top of page 4, we're adding a new chemical on line 2, isobutylparaben. We're deleting the chemicals in subdivisions 14 through 17, and we have some renumbering. We're renumbering the chemical in subdivision 20 and renumbering the, removing the chemicals in subdivisions 23, 24, and 27. So a shorter list, several removals and 1 addition.
So to be more consistent with other states is what this is. California.
That's what
Yes,
the
yes.
changes are to be more consistent with California.
Yes. Okay. The next set of sections in the bill have pertain to PFAS and textiles. And we have a definition of a new definition of outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions. So if you see under the definition of apparel, one of the subdivisions on line 10 is outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions. And so this new definition defines that. So it would mean outdoor apparel that are extreme and extended use products designed for outdoor sports experts for applications that provide protection against extended exposure to extreme rain conditions or against extended immersion in water or wet conditions, such as from snow, in order to protect the health and safety of the user, and that are not marketed for general consumer use. Examples of extreme and extended use products include outerwear for offshore fishing, offshore sailing, whitewater, kayaking, and mountaineering. And then we're renumbering the remaining subdivisions in that section. And that is it for the changes, that particular group of sections. And then we move to our language on PFAS and turf fields. We've removed the definition of intentionally added, which is why line 10, subdivision 3 is highlighted, just to show there's been some renumbering. Similarly, a corresponding change was made on line 15 to remove intentionally added. So now it would read that a manufacturer, supplier, distributor shall not manufacture, sell, offer, or for sale, distribute for sale, or distribute for use in the state and athletic turf fields containing PFAS. And this section shall not apply to the sale of athletic turf fields that have already been approved by voters prior to July 1, 2023. And then there's a new section on page 13. This is a report on or before November 15th. of this year, the Department of Environmental Conservation, in consultation with the Health Department, shall submit a report to this Committee on Human Services containing recommendations on how to more comprehensively manage PFAS across a range of product categories. And then a change in the effective dates. Previously, it had said that chemicals and cosmetic products and menstrual products, and then the PFAS and SKU and textiles should take place on January 1, 2026, and now it is 2025.
So the textile, probably what we've talked about in here and we've heard mostly about is moving the textile date to 2028. No, I'm looking in the corner at Lauren, because you've been helping Katie with working on some of this.
For the record, Lauren Burrow, Vermont Conservation Voters. I had heard consistency with California, which would be the 2025 date for general textiles, but 2028 for the
Severe weather.
year.
Yeah, so that would be just an added date.
Okay.
Just for clear,
Can we do that?
clear.
That makes sense, Katie?
No, can you say that again?
Yeah, Lauren, you want to reiterate?
So California's textile bill has an effective date of 2025, which is now reflected in the new draft. But there is an exception for the severe outdoor weather gear, which we just added the definition for, of 2028.
Just for clarification, the outdoor weather gear is different from the safety gear. Are we lumping
Yeah.
the safety gear in with the extreme weather gear?
I think there's an exception.
There's an exemption for
personal protective
firefighters and military.
But I'm
and
thinking of the motorcycle folks.
There's not an exemption for motorcycles. Textiles.
Can someone direct us to that exemption? What page?
It's in the, it's not highlighted.
Yes, it's in the definition. So this is the definition of apparel, so page 7, and it lists all types of clothing items. And then it says clothing items intended for regular wear, or formal wear occasions, does not include personal protective equipment or clothing items for exclusive use by the U.S. Armed Forces.
So we're not gonna do 2028 for motorcycles.
No. Well, it'll be for outdoor extreme weather gear, and so that they may be able to access that clothing for going on a motorcycle. But I don't know how you define motorcycle wear. Levi's for wearing on a motorcycle compared to going out and working in the backyard. The motorcycle guys aren't. And that's not in California, and it would be that you'd have this whole new category for the state of Vermont.
Can I ask a question? What you had mentioned in this exemption on page, the apparel, does not include personal protective equipment or clothing for exclusive use by our armed forces, but you had mentioned firefighters. Does that would cover the exemption
How
would
does that
cover
work?
firefighters? Because I find that somewhat ironic, because we did a whole thing about
And we
firefighting
did fire,
foam,
but we also.
and they
did
really
firefighting.
wanted the foam to be not have PFAS in it.
We did their equipment last
For
time.
firefighters in that. I have to refresh my memory though.
I think it's in the last bill that we did.
We cover, it
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
cover PPE, but I
That's
don't
why I got
remember with any specificity.
So I wouldn't want this exemption to then override the coverage that we did in the other bill,
No, that was
because we got clear testimony from firefighters that they do not want to have their foam and their PPE to have
I
PFAS in
don't
it.
think it does, but Katie can check for us. So in statute, we
Yeah.
have
Entitled
taken it out of
18,
firefighting.
Chapter
By
33,
date.
sale of PPE containing PFAS. So that says, a manufacturer or other person that sells firefighting equipment to any person, municipality, or state agency shall provide written notice to the purchaser at the time of sale, citing to this chapter. If the PPE contains PFAS, the written notice shall include a statement that the PPE contains PFAS and the reasons PFAS are added to the equipment. The manufacturer or person selling PPE and the purchaser shall retain the notice for 3 years.
So it's
So it's not
notification.
it's the notification, it's not a
That's how I
prohibition.
remembered it. I must have gone in the house, the notification, because I thought we, like,
I forget how it left.
I
there.
think when we voted the bill out, it was just, it can't be
You may be right.
used. So how would that interact with this PPE exemption?
Well, the language in the bill, so this is just a notification.
Oh, this is just PPE for the armed forces.
Yeah,
That's
it's
how
not
I
for
read
fire.
it.
Yes,
So it wouldn't be PPE generally, it would just be PPE for,
armed forces are carved out from the bill.
okay.
I read it as an or. It's two separate categories. Armed forces is,
Let me take a look.
You're right, it is an or, so it would be PPE for anybody.
Right.
And that PPE is pretty
Oh,
broad,
that's
because
why I
then you
said
have like,
firefighters
you know,
before.
like surgical masks with
That's right.
PPE. Yeah,
PPE
Broad
for
definition.
motorcycles
Yeah.
would be
PPE.
specific outer garments for in
yeah,
case of an accident to be
Yeah.
skidding down the road.
They could.
If it's, as long as they designate it as
Right.
personal protective equipment.
I think it's actually a little unclear.
Yes.
Because it's hard to see if armed forces is modifying both. Or
Do you
just
need a
clothing.
separate sentence?
Well, I was thinking of flipping it.
Okay.
Well, it depends what your policy decision is.
well, it seems to me that if we want it to just be for armed forces, it should be an and.
Well, I think
Personal
personal
PPE
protective
or
equipment.
and clothing items for exclusive use by the US Armed Forces, that would just be a military exemption. If we want the exemption to be for all PPE, which I personally would not want it to be, then the or is fine, but
Can you put the language back up on the screen, please?
All the military equipment is through the federal supply chain.
Yes, it is.
So they're gonna be
They
exempt anyway.
contract, they contract for it separately, so it's not gonna affect the general manufacturing process. So if we look then at that language, Katie, it says clothing items intended for regular wear or formal occasions does not include personal protective equipment. That's pretty general. So let's just, forgetting the armed forces, we're fine with that, but the PPE piece could be problematic unless you also identify PPE, because there may be some places we're missing for that, but then as a separate sentence, related to current statute on the notification provision that we have, or how would you do that?
I think honestly, if the intention is for it to be that it doesn't include PPE and it doesn't include clothing items for the US Armed Forces, what's unclear is, does US Armed Forces modify both? I might just flip the order and say does not include clothing items for exclusive use by the US Armed Forces or PPE, then it's clear that you're not trying to modify
Okay,
PPE with US Armed Forces.
yeah.
but I don't think we should exclude PPE.
Well, that's the question, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
So if we put PPE in as the general category,
Mhm.
and we know we also have language in statute relating to the firefighters, then do we reference that as something different from the whole PPE? That is the question.
well,
So,
that's a question.
Yeah.
is that There's
well,
a
that's
lot
my
of
question
PPE.
right
it's
now.
not just
So
firefighters.
PPE, do we include, we can put that in, I'm fine with including it all. And then the question for Katie is, because we know we have the firefighter piece in there, we haven't heard from firefighters. Do we simply reference that section of statute And as this travels to the House, an important question to be addressed. Looking at you, because you're our legal mind.
I mean, they sort of do two different things.
Yeah,
So I don't know that you'd necessarily cross-reference them, because one is about a notification and one is saying this section doesn't apply
Yeah.
to that group.
Right.
So in my mind, they're separate and you wouldn't need a cross-reference.
so we just leave it. If we want all of PPE in there, we leave it as all of PPE.
We take PPE out.
I'm thinking
We-
taking PPE out.
Yeah, because I don't think we want to exclude it, because this would give a big exemption for anything that's considered public, personal protective equipment, including like surgical masks and, you know, things that, first
Exactly.
responders use, things that firefighters use, you know, medical people, all, the whole gamut. And then they can be,
Yeah.
that would expose them daily to PFAS.
So flipping the sentence would then have PPE as part of the armed forces.
No, it would have the opposite.
Okay,
effect.
take it out. Unless I hear differently from a majority of the committee, we don't want to exclude PPE. How is the committee feeling at this point?
I'm not sure the origin of the PPE. Who
It
would
was in
want
the
it?
underlying bill, and I think it's related to California and other states.
Could we define PPE in the definitions?
Sure. I don't know if that would help.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a matter of whether we want to exclude it or not from the manufacturing.
Katie,
I was just gonna say, Paula, if you do exclude it, then you would probably delete the section about notification in the firefighting. Because if they can't sell it or manufacture it, then there's not an issue with.
so let's just take it out. Well, unless I hear differently. Bill, you're chomping on the bit over there.
I know, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. I would just make two observations.
For the record.
Yes, for the record, William Briscoe, Associated Industries of Vermont. I do strongly suspect this definition is either identical or functionally the same as the other states that you're trying to follow. And I also strongly suspect that the reason why PPE is excluded is because of the critical function of PFAS in either the manufacturer or the makeup of the product. I do not know what efforts or timelines there may be for industry getting rid of PFAS in PPE, but at the very least, I would expect that it could be something very similar to the outdoor clothing where there might be more of a timeline needed, and I think we can hear about what that would be before you include.
So I think the current timeline would be what, 2025?
Right.
Yes.
So let's hold that. Let's leave that for now. And this has got a road to travel to the House.
But
So if we take PPE out, the implementation of this will be 2025.
But if we take it out, they never have to implement it. This is excluding it from the timeline. It's excluding it from removal of PFAS from PPE.
So you want to put it up above where it is regulated. That's fine.
Yeah, I want
I'm
it
just saying, we
regulated.
don't want to exempt it. That's what we're saying.
We don't want to exempt it, and
So
we
we want
don't,
to put it up above with the other list of suits and saris and scarves and tops, like,
yeah, and that they have to do it within the
Yeah.
3-year period or whatever.
yeah.
Okay, let me just back up and make sure
Back
I
up a minute.
understand. So you do want the exemption in the short term, but at a certain point, you want PPE to be treated as any other item of clothing, and it would not get an exemption. So what that will look like, something you're very familiar with from the child care bill, is repeating that section of statute twice. The second one will have a different effective date, and in that one, PPE won't be exempted. It will be listed under the items. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think you can do it, because if you look at the effective dates, there's an effective date for PFAS and ski wax and textiles
Yeah.
on 2025.
Mhm.
So if it's a textile, if PPE is considered a textile,
Mhm.
then they would have to meet
Fall under
the 2025 date. So for the next you know, 2 years, they could have PFAS, it could have PFAS in it, and after that, it couldn't.
So, yes,
So
So Katie, the question.
I don't think looking out to
Okay.
2028.
you don't
No.
need the double category unless we want to give them longer.
That's
for
what I thought you were
PPE, and
saying.
if we do, we could include PPE in the outdoor gear thing, you know.
Right, that's a
make-
different question. I want to ask Lauren a comment, because you've been working on these dates for a long period.
Yeah, for the record, Lauren Pearl, from Conservation Voters, and occasionally Bill and I agree. So California did look at this extensively. They even have a finding about firefighting gear specifically. I know the firefighters that we work with very much want to get PFAS out of their gear. They're really concerned about it. It's a high priority. I would say that it's not, the supply chains aren't there, like they're still doing the research to try to find and make sure that they can have, you know, the safe equipment. So I love the idea of including it. You might want to do the 2028 timeline, similar to the severe weather gear. California just decided to exempt it altogether, so that would still be, you know, pushing the industry to move in that direction. I think, you know, more than what the California bill did, which I think would be a great step. But my understanding is like there will not be supply chain ready by 2025, so that would be really hard to meet.
Well, then let's adhere to the California for now, because our making a change on PPE is not going to, I don't think it's going to accelerate the process. That's a suggestion.
I would prefer to have it like the outdoor gear.
You wanna put it
The
in
outdoor
2028?
apparel is, we're gonna change it in the next version. to be
It'll be the
2028.
2028. Yep.
So can we just put PPE as the 2028?
We can do
date as
that, and
well?
it will.
And then
I
it
mean, we
will
can do
push
that.
people to do it faster
Sure.
than if we exempt it.
What does the committee think about
I
that?
agree with that.
Okay. We'll go with it.
May I
Go ahead.
recommend that
Sure.
we put in the 2028 date into the bill?
Yeah.
We eventually vote on it, but we take testimony next week about PPE and manufacturers, and then if necessary, modify, amend.
We won't do it.
We can think about doing that. We'll figure out how to do that. Maybe there's a way that we can have some communication outside of committee, and Lauren and Katie can, and maybe Bill, you could work together. Yeah. Let's see. I don't know. Yeah, so that would be a good group your interests are all there, and that would help us very much. Okay. And we'll get some feedback on what more we might have to do. And remember, it is going to the House. So be stuck with us. I like that idea. 2028 actually is good. It's a good push.
Thank you. Can I ask 2 more questions on the bill? Just to clarify that the list, that the changes in the list, and this is probably a question for Lauren. I was trying to read your facial expression. Is this consistent with the California and Washington standards, or is this?
So again, for the record, Lauren Pearl, this makes the bill more consistent with Washington and California.
It does, okay.
So it removed the things that Vermont would have been the first.
Out of the, yeah,
Out
the parabens are concerned, actually, that
Yeah.
we're taking those out. I'm not-
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, and then my second question is, I appreciate the addition of the report. I'm just wondering, it's not in section 5, it more comprehensively manage, I think is unclear what that means. And then this is only
PFAS.
PFAS.
So
and-
there might be some changes here based on the testimony we heard when you were out of the room,
Okay,
when Matt Chapman was in. And I was going to suggest that we ask for a report from Matt Chapman and the work that he is doing regionally with other states, because they are looking at the issue of grouping chemicals and how to move forward on that. So the language would be a report back from the Director of Waste Management and Prevention And because he's the point person for the multi-state work, for the regional work. And so I can work with Katie on that language and we'll.
Well, it's not just about waste management. It is, you
No,
know,
it's-
instead of
he's
where
not-
we just keep doing these.
Senator, he's not only doing waste management, he's looking at how to prevent upstream the introduction of chemicals in consumer products, as well as how to remove them from the waste stream. So we'll put in that report from the multi-state work that he's doing. He's in Albany right now, meeting with a whole group of states. So, and so when you look back at the YouTube, you'll see that.
Well, so it's,
He's sending his testimony.
okay, the thing I want to avoid is that every year this committee does another bill on another kind of product. We keep doing this. It's so much so that the statutes are overloaded with like, oh, ski wax and, you know, all these different subcategories. If we can just do, we are banning this class of chemicals in manufacturing of anything.
So it would be
That would
helpful.
be
If
better.
If science worked that way, we could do it, but one of the
That's the way
problems
they do it in Europe.
and they have.
They ban classes of chemicals.
Your EU reach is quite extensive. They have a whole bunch of researchers. They have a huge organizational structure for doing this. We don't have, I encourage you to listen to Matt Chapman's testimony and it will, when it goes online, to look at it. And we'll try to put a better report in that will help move forward in that direction. It's something I've been concerned about for years and it's very difficult to get at. We are actually starting to move more in the direction of looking at chemicals within groups of chemicals within consumer products. This bill is a huge step in that direction. So we'll keep trying to work on that. So we'll try and get some language there.
I tend to agree with Senator Hardy, but in the meantime, this is fairly mature and it's a good effort. I recommend that we continue with it and then look for the future at the option which you're outlining.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything we can do to chip away at toxic chemicals in our clothes and food and products is obviously good. It's not that I don't want to do what we're doing. It's that, you know, after having done now 3 or 4 of these bills in my 5 years here, it seems much more productive to look more holistically and systematically. And other countries do that. Other countries that do not have as good of higher education and research facilities as the United States does, we should be able to do this.
So there are 2 issues that you're bringing up. One is how we test for chemicals. And so it's really difficult to look at all the different chemicals within a class of phthalates or parabens, for example, and to identify what residual is in a product. That's one issue. The other issue where Europe is ahead of us, but they adhere to this principle called precaution. So they have what's known as a precautionary principle. And before any chemical gets introduced, they test it. So when it is released into the market, it's been pre-tested. The United States doesn't do that. The pre-testing happens at the manufacturer level, and it's very limited. The FDA is not doing what we would like it to do in terms of pre-testing chemicals before they go out into consumer products. So it would be terrific to build some support for what's known as the precautionary principle. It's not a scientific principle, but it is a value and a belief about how we deal with chemicals at the manufacturing and the creation level before we actually put them on the market. So that's another issue. So when we talk about Europe, they have a different philosophy about how chemicals are put into the market and tested. And so we could say every manufacturer needs to begin testing before anything goes out on the market. That would be really ahead of the game. And I've tried that, but it's gonna work. But the FDA should be helping us with that. Anyway, so we can ask for a report back but it may be a bit frustrating to see what we get. So we'll work on some language. I think it's Matt Chapman's office, and Senator Hardy, if you want to also work on that, that'd be great. Take a look at Matt's testimony.
For this bill, or are you saying?
Yeah, we just want to modify this report that's here, if we can. It's not the Department of Health, it will be, but it could be just the way it's worded here, in consultation with Department of Health. And then instead of just leaving it at the PFAS, we could ask for other chemicals in any regional work.
I do want to acknowledge that you did ask the question of groups.
Yes, they did.
Matt Chapman, so.
Yeah, and he was pretty explicit about what they can and can't do. Okay, so that's it. I'm not, so if we can modify that language to ask for other groups of chemicals, that would be helpful. And we're gonna get something back from our other group, that'd be good. And then we'll look at Katie, we'll look at the new bill first thing in the morning.
Yes.
Or what's tomorrow?
Right.
Let's see where you are tomorrow.
She's
Yeah.
everywhere.
You're gonna be here.
I think I start with Senate
I
Judiciary.
do.
Yeah, you're in there from 9:30.
And then-
And S36 has been voted out, so that may change our start time.
Okay.
All right. All right, so, you're not done.
I'm gonna switch folders.
All right. So, Alex, do we have copies of the
Yes, I'm
bill?
gonna go pick those up for you.
All right, actually,
S56
5-6.
with the placeholder filled. Is the placeholder filled?
Well, so, no, Katie's been working really hard
Katie
on that.
hasn't taken a straw poll on it yet, so I haven't, this committee, so I haven't put it into the bill.
Okay, so I need to go get my copy of it then.
No, Alex is bringing it in. Oh, what are you getting?
I can pull it up online.
It's in the bill.
It's not in the bill yet.
Oh,
Because
oh,
this committee hasn't taken a straw poll on it,
okay.
so I didn't include it in the bill until you've done a straw poll.
I just want to go grab it because.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I know.
We're still live and Alex is in here, so we'll just be at ease for a minute. How you doing? We're always at ease.
Grease on the pressure.
Mhm.
While we're waiting, I can say that the Department of Labor did get back to me this morning, and they're not in favor. I think you also got an email
Yeah, I haven't read it yet. Yeah.
of that language. I can read you the email. Are you interested in hearing?
We are still live, so hold off until we get started. We can
Okay.
do that.
I'll have to pull up my email.
Okay, so this is the latest draft of S56. And Katie wanted to, and Katie's been working double time on this, as a number of us have outside of committee, trying to pull together all of the work that is going on. Katie, I will turn it over to you. I know that the Education Committee has a proposed amendment, and when Senator Goulart gets back, we might go to that. I think there are some sections that we absolutely need to get through briefly that we haven't seen. And I do know that joint fiscal's life is short in here, wanting to have them look at the language today on the fiscal piece. So Is there a way that we can jump to the fiscal piece and then move on to the sections that we haven't spent sufficient time on?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'll close out of this. Maybe what would be helpful, I'll look at my notes from JFO. What if I give a big picture of the proposal?
Yes.
And then we won't look at the language yet. And I know that Joyce and Nolan both have some updates since this language was drafted last night.
That would be
Anyway.
extremely.
Okay, so let me close out of this. Okay, so this latest version of the draft sort of flips some of the work that this committee has been doing with childcare with regard to provider payments on its head a bit. So the last version you saw retained the linkage between the STARS quality program and payments. This version that will look at today decouples that relationship between STARS and payments. And it also builds in both an increased provider payment and a bonus system for providers who are maintaining high quality or moving up in the quality of their services. So in terms of how that's achieved, there is what I'm calling a provider rate adjustment. And what that looks like is that on January 1 of this year, all childcare provider reimbursement rates would be enhanced, and they
2024.
yes,
Okay.
this coming year.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
2024.
Let's see.
It's going out online. I don't wanna
Yes,
read it.
yes. We're looking 9 months out at this point. So the reimbursement rates would be increased so that all providers would be receiving a flat fee, and that rate amount would be 33% higher than the current 5-star rate for providers. The only kind of just difference between the rates that providers would be receiving is whether they are a center or whether they are family childcare home. Otherwise, the rates are flat. So that is sort of the one-time adjustment. After that point, there's language written into this draft that there would be an annual increase to that amount with regard to a standardized scale. So when there's an increase in the scale annually, providers would also receive that increase in their rates. And then on top of that, there is a bonus program, an incentive program. So the idea behind the incentive program is that there would be a special fund developed solely for this purpose. There would be a general fund, I think, general fund appropriation into the special fund annually. And the department would use this special fund to give incentives annually. So any 5-star provider who's retaining its 5-star status would annually get an incentive under this program. Any facility that has less than 5 stars but moves up in its star level would receive a bonus, an incentive for moving up a star level. And that amount of the bonus would be the same as what the 5-star providers receive as an incentive each year. So that is sort of the big picture of what this language does. And now I know JFO has some maybe amendments or.
Yeah, 2 small things. One is the 33 is actually Social Goods math, and we have to take into inflation on it. 33 we think should be 38.5% now because we didn't adjust for. It won't change the underlying numbers. It just has to do with matching the 23 with the 23.
Gotcha, yeah.
And then the other piece is the index. We're still working on the language currently says the employment cost index. Joyce has been doing some research to try to find something that she feels to be an appropriate Vermont specific index that accurately takes into consideration wages and benefits and other stuff.
Where are you in the bill here?
Well, that would all be up.
What page is it?
4 or 5.
4 is the 33%, I guess it would now be 38.5%, that's line 4. And then the escalator language is page 5, line 14.
And our most important goal in this committee is to agree on a policy for having the escalator and having the bonus and so on, which Because once Joyce figures out where it began, there might be some changes as this moves down the path, but this is good.
I have one more very important piece of information that I didn't fully process until I started putting language together last night. And that is that this proposal applies to children 0 through 4 years of age participating in CCFAP. Therefore, there are children participating in CCFAP who are over 4 years of age, and the payments to providers would still be managed under the existing payment structure. So this new
Up to
structure,
13,
I think it's up to 13.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, there'll be some additional language related to that.
You'll
Or will it
see,
simply be
I've
embedded?
added a new section specific to 0 to 4 year olds, and I've specified that the old section is for the older ages.
Okay.
And those are actually most of the children, when you just look at the number of kids.
I can't hear you, Shannon.
Most of the kids who receive CCFAP, when you just look at the numbers, are school age kids.
Are the older kids?
When you just look at the number of kids, not the hours. That
I
was the
think
data.
we got the number just today, and I think it's 2,000 school agers. And
For the record,
sorry, for the record, Janet McLaughlin, Deputy Commissioner of Child Development Division. So we pulled the numbers yesterday, and of the 7,000 or so kids, 2,000 of them were school agers.
I thought it was the reverse. That's what we got earlier this year, was that there was like 5,000-ish of the school age kids, but maybe I'm remembering it backwards. Because it was striking to me that there was such a high number of school age kids.
When you say school age, that's
but the point is, there will be implications then, for the bill.
Okay. I stand correct?
Is there anything else here on the financial side that JFO needs to help us with?
Are you gonna touch on grant relief, or are you not there yet?
Not yet.
You're not there.
Not yet. For the record, Joyce Manchester from the Joint Fiscal Office. So in addition to changing the index, the increase in the amount paid by CCFAP, because we have increased that dollar amount by 5.5% to cover the wage inflation between 2022 and 23, it also means that the maximum FPL, in order to avoid a benefit cliff, has moved up to 600% of
Okay.
FPL. So it's not a big shift, but it does change.
It does change that, where that is and what the slope looks like.
Yes, yes, if you want to continue
Yeah,
not to have that,
yeah.
like,
So the 600% of poverty for the short person, that's the 180, and you had talked with us about that previously. Yes.
Can I ask a question? Is it the intention to eliminate the age differentials? Because right now we have an infant rate, a toddler rate, a preschool rate, and a school age rate. And so the language feels like it doesn't accommodate that.
It doesn't account for that, so that's a policy question for the committee. What is your intent?
Joyce Manchester, Joint Fiscal Office again. So in fact, I've maintained the same differential that now exists at CCFAP reimbursement rates. I've taken an average to say on average, it would be this amount of money. But the question is, does the committee want to increase the differential for infants and toddlers? Because I know this year has.
The baby bump, I've been interested in having that in place. So is that in the current draft?
Yes, we
Okay.
would maintain, there would just be an increase in each of the rates by the same percentage.
Not the language.
It's not in the language.
So
Oh, I see.
yeah, so you want
Might be in your numbers, but it's not in Amy's words.
So I'm just thinking the differential that you're referencing is not in the existing statute. It's just something that is the way you administer the programs.
to,
So I'm wondering, do we need language and if we're just maintaining the status quo?
I don't know those details as well, since I'm new to the specifics, but my sense is when I read the way you just described flat payments, did not allow for a.
It would be how it's
difference based on age.
administered. Once you
So-
have the dollars, then it's how you administer it based on age. But,
So you guys can tell me.
yes, that's a good question.
It does, right. Okay, Sarah's pointing out, it says identical reimbursement rate, which feels
Yeah.
very.
Differentials by child age.
Is there anything else from the financial folks that we need to look at in this new draft?
Um,
Joyce first, and then Deputy Commissioner.
Yes, Joyce
No.
Manchester, Joint Fiscal Office. I would just say that we are moving away from using the employment cost index because it is a US nationwide index.
Can she take her mask off?
Yeah, can you speak louder? Yeah, that's good.
Yes, currently in the draft, it says that we would index the reimbursement amounts by the employment cost index. But that applies nationwide. That refers to wages and compensation for the entire US. And the Vermont Department of Labor does publish something from the quarterly census of employment and wages, which would be more relevant for Vermont. It is just looking at wages in educational services.
Okay,
And on a year-over-year basis, as of Q3 2022, that increase had been 5.5%. So that's where we got the 5.5.
okay, that's helpful.
And I would think that that's what you want to use going forward to increase the reimbursements over time.
So leave it at that point, but this is more, excuse me, hold on, the question, we need everyone to hear it. So this would then be more relevant to the state of Vermont,
Yes.
period. And so we want to have something in there that says related to the state of Vermont. Okay, Senator Hardy, you have a question.
I just wondered where in the draft Joyce was
Where,
talking.
where is this in the draft?
Page 5, line 14.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions for the financial?
The other thing I might add, no, I'm not going to fiscal, is that adjustments we're working on are only to the 0.4. We haven't,
Right, so-
yeah,
yeah,
to be clear, we haven't.
haven't done the 5 to 12, 13. Deputy Commissioner.
Is the intention to exclude 5-year-olds not yet enrolled in kindergarten?
No. No. 0 to 4 is shorthand for pre-kindergarten.
And the language is birth through age 4. Oh, I see what your question is. There are 5-year-olds in preschool.
Kindergarten.
Yep, I got you.
Are we still using a cost assumption of 23,000 per child?
No, okay,
No, because that's in 2022 dollars and we want to move that up to 2023 dollars.
So it's
So it would increase by 5.5% and that brings us to something like 24,265 on average. But in fact, we would be increasing the reimbursement rates as they currently stand by 38.5% instead of 33%.
So associated with that cost estimate or assumptions, did we change any of the language on in the bill to reflect the difference between that estimate and the RAND estimate? All the language seems to have stayed consistent.
So all of the numbers we worked with previously were in 2022 dollars. So the RAND high quality number of 28,100 was in 2022 dollars. So that would also have to be bumped up by 5.5%. Okay, so
Okay, so that's not my question. That's good.
Okay.
I get that. That's solid, but what assumptions in the, what cost elements in the bill have been altered to reflect the $5,000 difference between the cost per child?
No,
Just not tracking that yet.
so the cost, the reimbursement cost would rise by $1,265, right? It goes from 23,000 to 24,265, whatever the number is. But at the same time, the 28,000 would rise by 500.
I get that.
Okay, here's,
The
I
only-
think.
To answer your question, the only change is we're moving the 33 to 38.5% to adjust for that piece.
He's looking for the justification for having those numbers in the bill. And so that justification comes when we see the joint fiscal note. So it has the derivation of those numbers. So how do we get to 24? When we see a fiscal note, it'll have some indication of what those, where the numbers have come from and what they mean, but it won't be in the bill. Is that the question you're asking?
It is the question, because we seem to be stumbling over a cost assumption that drop. We're dealing with a cost assumption, but we haven't changed any elements of the bill that would affect that, would lower that cost.
No, we don't have to change the policy is to achieve a goal that is enrollment based and that we are looking to increase our reimbursement, the 600% level. And so how we get to those numbers is a note. And we've been talking about this along. We know that the RAND report had a recommendation based on all of their research that would take it to 28,000. And then we've tried to say, what is realistic? What can we do realistically? And moving away from the 2022 numbers to a more realistic time frame. So now that's what joint fiscal has brought us, and they have to do all those calculations to get us there. So it's a policy decision to move that ahead. We could stay at 17.4. We could stay right where we are and not do anything. Or we could go to the RAND report. What we're trying to do is to identify something that will help childcare centers, families, and our businesses to have childcare in place and to move forward.
Right, but my point is that I'm trying to hit a lower number than RAND, but a higher number than current. We've increased CCFAP. We've added retention bonuses, we've added tuition. We haven't subtracted anything to get a lower overall cost per child. That's what I'm still struggling with.
Well, we're getting a higher level of cost per child because
We're getting high level cost per child based on current costs, but lower than the RAND. But all the language in the bill is essentially is derived from the RAND study. But we're not.
Oh, I see what you mean. No, the language is somewhat derived from RAND, at least the fiscal information is, but the policy is ours and it's come from the testimony that we've heard. So to have some, and from us, to have some incentive in place for quality improvement, we're putting that in. And the RAND report does talk about quality, but we're modifying that language to fit with what we know to be reasonable. I'm going to let Sarah Kenny, do you want to comment? And then Senator Hardy.
I don't know if this is helpful. I think I understand what you're getting at, Senator.
I'm trying to-
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sarah Kenny from Let's Grow Kids. I don't know if this helps, but I think what I hear you saying, Senator Weeks, is the RAND was built on the cost of care model, right?
Yeah.
And so you all have been talking about moving toward the cost of care, and that this bill is like having a report back on the cost of care, but not actually implementing that model yet. So I think I've heard you talking about, what goes into that total cost of care model and how are we moving toward that or figuring out what pieces of that need to be there, but that's not in this version of the bill. This is building on the current market rate survey and increasing rates based on that. And so not yet moving to the cost of care model. I don't know if that is what you're getting at, but that's
Yeah.
that's sort of wrapping my brain.
Senator Hardy, you want to comment?
No, I was going to say something similar to what Sarah said, is that this is kind of halfsies in a way that is unsatisfying in a lot of ways, in that it's kind of not, it's not going to a new way of doing things, but it's trying to move in that direction. But I mean,
It's hard to predict.
I think I hear your frustration because you're saying if we have this report, then we should either be doing what this report is saying or trying to figure out, well, maybe
So we're
explain better.
roughly somewhere in the order of $11,000 per child higher than current costs, right? And to justify those increased costs, we do in the bill, the recommendations, proposals for things like making the childcare center leader, a bachelor's degree, et cetera, the pay scale, wage scale, the tuition reimbursements or forgiveness. Those are all things that justify the increase from the current cost to something in the order of 28 or whatever. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out if that number, that 28,000 incorporates all of the elements of the bill, and that is the cost justification. That is the cost. It does include all the.
It does not include all of the things in the RAND report that get to the 28.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
it
get
does
that,
not.
but it's pretty close. I mean, it's pretty darn close to the. So anyway, I'll leave it there. That the $28,000 per child reflects all the increases reflected in the bill from the current $17,000 per child.
But it's also, the 28 is also $2022.
Right.
So the 28 is actually lower than what we would see in 2023. So so now what we're doing is we're trying to catch up. And we're trying to do something that we can afford. It's ultimately what it comes down to. So, yes, the policy that's in the bill will drive how that money is utilized within the child care environment. And we're actually trying to say how it will be used. We're saying it will be used to improve quality. We're saying it will be utilized to help families up to a certain income level and do those things. But are we giving all the money to do that? That would be expected if we followed the 2023 level from the RAND up? And the answer is no, we're not. We are continuing to use market rate, which is different from total cost of care. And what joint fiscal has done for us is try to find that average, find a place where we can move forward comfortably economically. And we'll be coming back to look at total cost of care again and how it fits with all of the possibilities that exist in that RAND report. Ongoing question. So any other questions on the fiscal pieces, the financial pieces in the bills, or anything else that we need to hear from Nolan, you or Joyce on that? No. Okay. So Katie, we've been through the changes that are in there, but I'm going to suggest that one of the things that we haven't done effectively in walking through is what else is new in here? Do we have the new parental leave piece?
We have the new parental leave piece, but you probably do want to look at this new language with the CCFAP because it's a pretty substantial rewrite.
Okay, but we haven't done the governance piece yet either, but that may have to just be what it was when we went through it initially. We haven't changed it, so I'm not sure that we have to do the deep dive. So let's go through. Take us through, please.
Okay, so new language in green. This section 3 is the one-time adjustment. On January 1st of 2024, the department shall adjust child care provider reimbursement rates and CCFAP for child care services provided to children from birth through 4 years of age. I will make a note there to include 5-year-olds not yet eligible for kindergarten. The adjusted reimbursement rate should be 33%. Sounds like the change should be 38.5% higher than fiscal year 23 5-star reimbursement rate in the Vermont STAR system. All providers in the same childcare setting shall receive identical reimbursement rate depending on whether the provider operates a regulated childcare center or a preschool program or regulated childcare home. Again, I've noted the age differentials and I'll make that update. Section 4 is the existing section 3514, payment to providers. This is, you'll see I've changed the name to be specific that this is for children not exceeding 4 years of age. I might play with that because we're going to carve out children who are 5 years of age and not yet eligible for kindergarten. But basically the concept here is that these providers serving these children will continue to be served under the same reimbursement program under CCFAP. And we do have the same change that this is enrollment based versus attendance based. Then in section 4A at the top of page 5, there is this new payment to providers section specific to birth through age 4. Again, we're going to recognize that there are 5-year-olds not yet eligible for kindergarten who will be served under this model. The commissioner shall establish a payment schedule for the purpose of reimbursing providers for full or part-time childcare services to children birth through 4 years of age, rendered to families who participate in CCFAP. All providers in the same childcare setting category shall receive an identical reimbursement rate payment dependent on whether the provider operates a regulated center or family childcare home. The rate used to reimburse providers shall be increased annually in alignment with the most recent employment cost index. Sounds like that might change. And payments will be based on enrollment versus attendance. This subsection B is here because it is in the existing language that the commissioner may establish a separate payment schedule for childcare providers who have received specialized training approved by the commissioner related to protective or family support services. So that is the current law and that wouldn't change under this new model for this age group of children. And subsection C, this is our incentive program. C1 applies to programs currently that are 5 stars. So annually, the department shall provide a flat incentive payment to all providers earning 5 stars in Vermont from the High Quality Early Care and Education Special Fund. And then in section 6, page 6, subdivision C2, upon notice from a provider that the provider has achieved a higher level in the Vermont STAR system, the department shall award the provider a flat incentive payment equivalent to that received by providers earning 5 stars pursuant to subdivision 1 of this section. Incentive payment shall be appropriated from the High Quality Early Care and Education Special Fund. I should say distributed and not appropriated. The provider may earn an incentive payment under the subdivision for each additional level achieved in the STAR system.
Go ahead.
So a couple of things.
Yeah.
Go ahead and write your thought down.
Thank you.
Okay. Page 6, that paragraph C2.
Go ahead. I can't.
Upon notice from a provider that the provider has achieved a higher level in, I think higher than what? Higher than the previous year?
Than their previous
Some
level.
comparative, that it's higher than what they had
Than
before
their-
or
Yeah.
Previous. Okay.
has
Higher level.
increased or some other thing to make
Okay,
it clear that it was, that they jumped stars.
Okay.
Star jump. We got baby ones.
So that, I'll let you write that.
Okay.
And then before that, the getting to what you were talking with Janet about section 4A, the identical reimbursement rate payment.
Yeah, that's gonna have to be rewritten.
Yeah, but I think though, this identical is referring to this, that is referring to that there wouldn't be a differential of payments between providers.
Correct. I think what I would be doing is putting some language in the first sentence. That would say they'll establish a payment schedule accounting for child age, something like
Okay.
that. And then I don't know how I feel about the word identical, but the idea is that providers
Right.
all receive the same rate. There'll be a center rate and a childcare home rate.
Right, okay. And then that may be in the other one above on page 4. There's also the use of identical, and I don't know if that one is problematic as well.
Where are you?
Page 4, line 7.
I think we have to have the same language about accounting for
Child
child
age
age.
there. And I wonder if this paragraph, is this meant, this now 38.5% higher? Is this a reset? And then
Yes.
from there, it increases by the,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes, this is a
Okay.
1-year adjustment, and then from there you build using the escalator.
Okay, okay, that was
Everybody's on
not
the same page.
clear to me that's what this is. Maybe it's in the other, maybe it's in the language where the
But if I said on January 24, the department shall provide a one-time adjustment, something like that, so it's clear that it's only happening once.
yeah, that might help there, but then if you look on. so let me
Initial
write that.
one-time adjustment,
Um,
really sell it.
Then if you look on the section 4A, 3515. The rate used to reimburse shall be increased annually. It seems to me that there needs to be some reference here to the fact that there was just a reset.
See, I'm hesitant. Yes, I hear your point, and I definitely played with how to mechanize this. This is an ongoing law, so it feels strange to recognize a one-time occurrence, a one-time appropriation. So this is meant to be looking forward. This is your course of action moving forward.
Right.
So I was hoping that we could handle that through the effective dates, whereas we have that one adjustment that's taking place on a date certain, and that this would take effect after that to build upon that.
So section 4A would take effect essentially January 1st, 2024, or July 1st, 24?
Yes.
Okay, so then,
No, not as this is written, but it could be that. This is written to have it take effect on January 1, 2024.
Yes.
So that both pieces take effect at the same time. So we're doing the adjustment, and then we're saying on top of the adjustment, this is the new way to move forward in calculating provider rates.
but if they take effect at the same time, I think it would imply that you reset and then automatically inflate it. So you'd want to stagger it a little bit so you're not applying the inflation to a
Subsequent years.
new thing, I think. But, and then I also just think that it should be that the shall be increased annually.
Sorry, I'm thinking that through. The way we could handle that is put in statute, when, at what point in the year the escalator takes effect, like annually on July 1, or I don't know, JFO could give me a date that would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it just seemed to me, you don't want to reset and then inflate it right
Get
away.
a double.
And then the language about increased by the ECI or whatever it's called, it's not clear what the base is that you're increasing. So like the prior year's rate should be
Okay.
increased annually by the ECI or
Okay.
something like that. Does that make sense?
It does. I can tell this is a first draft written late at night.
Well, it's not, it's
Yeah,
also,
but
it's hard to draft math.
It is.
And so you want to you want to be able to understand in the language
Exactly
how
what
the
you're
math
doing.
works because it matters.
This is the first time we've seen it, so you're getting good feedback.
We're not gonna get pre-K study language today, maybe tomorrow.
First thing,
Should I just put it in?
yeah.
Have you guys approved it in education?
Yes. You had a email about it
Yeah, I did.
yesterday. Okay, so Katie, keep going.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're on 4B. And this is the creation of the special fund for the incentives. So this creates the high quality early care education special fund to be administered by DCF in accordance with state law. The special fund shall consist of any appropriation from the general fund and any gifts, devises, or grants received for the purpose of this section. Subsection C, the high quality childcare and education special fund shall be used for the implementation and ongoing provision of incentive payments to providers. And we're just cross-referencing the incentive section that we looked at previously.
Yeah, this, knowing special funds and how some of our other committees feel about them, they'll probably modify some of this language going forward.
So that's sort of it for the CCFAP language. I
Okay.
made a little tweak in the Building Bright Futures transition language. So they're assisting with all of the things that we had them listed doing instead of doing it themselves. There's also the paid family leave language at the end. And I mean, you've had a walkthrough of that, so I won't walk through it, but I want to raise that because it sounded like the committee wanted the Department of Economic Empowerment to administer that. That new department wouldn't exist until July 1, 2024. And the numbers that we're looking at have the parental leave taking effect January 1, 24. So you have a department administering a benefit before the department exists.
Oh, let's
That
not do
is-
that.
yeah. So, I mean, the options are somebody else could administer it, or the option is you could change the effective date of the program taking effect.
What is the date currently for? Is it January 2024?
That's the number that, the financial,
And so if we made it consistent, it would be July 2024.
Well,
yeah.
What happens? What
The
happens?
person who we were working with, the legislator we were working with, drafting it,
Yeah,
was intending for it to start in January.
yeah.
So you might want to have DCF
Yeah, no.
implement it and then it moves over with everything else in the restructure. But that creates a lot more drafting for Katie and,
Yeah. So, or we could, is there a way to say something like, will be administered by CDD and its successor? No.
It's probably not worth it, all this hassle. I mean,
Yeah.
benefits usually start on July 1st. So I think to the
Well,
extent that this is considered a
Well, the
benefit
intent was
program.
to, yeah. you're
Or, I
right.
mean, on January 1st.
I know, that's the point. January
Yeah.
1st is the date. So
I can draft it to take effect January 1, 2024. I'll have DCF administer it for 6 months.
okay,
And then I'll have I will move it in another section to the Department of Economic Empowerment's statute. Yeah, it will be fine. I can, if that's okay, I mean, that's not a big deal, but if that is okay, that you'll have one department administering for 6 months and then a different department administering after that, then that is
do it.
That is something I
think-
can
I think
draft
do
for
it
you.
because we know that in reality, the administration is not going to be changing. That would be good. Is that the only place there with the leave?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to just think through the effective dates because you have a lot of moving pieces. And just to be clear, when do we want each of these pieces to take effect and sort of be thoughtful about that? I think would be a helpful exercise.
Okay.
I was gonna say, can we take a few minute recess or are we about to
We're
end?
almost finished. It's
Okay.
almost 12 o'clock. Is there anything else in here that's new? Besides, I know we have the parental leave in here that we went through yesterday. And we have the education language coming to us from the Ed Committee.
I have that if you want. I mean,
Let's see what
15
we got for a few minutes. Let's
Okay.
do that. Yes.
The last thing that's also not in here yet,
Oh, wait.
RFP.
Which is,
The last thing that are not in here yet are the appropriations. for
Yes.
All these programs.
yes,
And that'll have to go into the final draft.
okay.
But we have to work with David.
My question,
Somewhere.
yeah, so the question I have is, we want to do this tomorrow. That's our deadline.
we will do it this afternoon at some point, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. Did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to suggest that we not rush through the pre-K and do it tomorrow instead.
Are you interested in holding that off till tomorrow? That's
Yes.
fine. Morgan, I think we're gonna hold off on the education language until tomorrow morning. We have it on our webpage.
Yes.
So we have it, we can all look at it, and 3 of you have seen it. I've seen it, and I know that Senator Hardy just mailed it, so we'll look at it tomorrow morning.
I mean,
So, Katie, can we,
actually, Chair, can I ask a quick question? I'm gonna be presenting that piece. Are we also gonna be taking testimony on it as well?
no, that's all done in your committee.
Okay.
So that's how that goes. That's one of the efficiencies of having 2 committees.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to this. Kate, I'd like to go offline and then we'll talk about process.